You are about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
All right, welcome back to the Dr. Dahlia Show. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So RFK Jr. is urging medical schools to teach more about nutrition to medical students so that hopefully medical students can then teach that to patients and then hopefully be able to be better equipped to fight against chronic disease. I think it's a fabulous idea. I did get nutrition in medical school, but it was a very small segment. I believe it was second year. And when medical students have to learn anatomy and physiology and biochem and pathology and embryology and histology and all of the ologies, I don't know much about. Okay, anyway, it is overwhelming. And I remember we embraced the nutrition segment of our curriculum. It was short. I don't know if I aced it because I think, maybe one of the reasons why we embraced it is we were so overwhelmed, with biochem and all the other, I think we got it in our first. I think we got it in our first year. I think we were just so overwhelmed with our other class. We were like, oh, thank God, yes. Give us the nutrition. I'll ace the test. We'll be fine. But that's not how you should teach nutrition. Yeah, I mean, this is something that I talked about when I was teaching at a medical school. What you need to do is have the longitudinal teaching that incorporates everything. So, like, for example, let's say you're learning about diabetes and you're in the diabetes section. Okay, well, then you also need to have the diet part of that as well. Same thing with high blood pressure. Now, a lot of schools do that. But I mean, it should be emphasized more. In fact, one study, I think back in 2015, says the average medical student only gets like 19 hours of nutrition and in their whole 4 year of training. I think we get more because depending on who you're rotating with, they'll be like, this is why I like avocados. This is why I tell people to do avocado toast instead of sugary cereal. Or, take away the salt, tell them to do low salt. I learned in school from my actually, this was after school, my Filipino patients who had diabetes said what they do is they pre-soak the rice. They say a lot of the rice milk increases their glycemic index. So they just pre-soak the rice and they pre-soak it for a day or two. And then when they cook the rice, it might not be as tasty, but they get less sugar because they had a very predominant rice diet. Some of my patients did. And so a lot of my nutrition I picked up from patients and from on my own. And my medical school was a great school. It's just, unfortunately, you have X amount of hours. And I mean, we were there all day learning. It was exhausting that, to add more hours. I see why some people are, but it's very easy to integrate nutrition and the curriculum where every time you have, shall we say, if you're doing like your clinical, clinical reasoning or the study that looks at your actual medical diseases, which you usually get maybe your second year, where in that is incorporated, okay, what would be a diet you would recommend? When you do your history and physical, how much are you talking about diet? And are you eating fruits and vegetables? Or are you saying, talk to us about what your meals look like? What does your typical breakfast look like? Typical lunch, typical dinner. And what do you eat for snacks? Are you drinking diet soda? Are you drinking fruit juice? Did you know that fruit juice is primarily sugar? I'd rather you squeeze your own orange juice and not add sugar to it. A lot of people don't know that. Remember I told you I was at Jules Stein training for my ophthalmology at UCLA. And some of the students or residents were like, oh, okay, it's another woman who's Hispanic and blind. Honestly, these tortillas are the worst thing for them. And they're like, and I talked to her. Nobody spoke Spanish, but I did. So I asked her in Spanish. I go, because she had acute blindness in one eye and she had diabetes. And I asked her in Spanish, when you were diagnosed with diabetes, what did they tell you not to eat? And she said, no dulces, which is no sweets. I'm like, did they talk to you about pan, bread, arroz, pasta? And did they talk? No, they didn't talk to her about any of that. And so, I mean, I learned early on as a student that anytime you diagnose somebody with diabetes, you better have, a conversation or have them go to diabetic teaching or have a nutritionist involved. But where I trained, my school was really, really good because we had nutritionists and we did. So University of Nevada, Reno and UCLA, they did a good job incorporating that. But apparently it's not happening enough because many patients are still failing when it pertains to, oh, I'm not supposed to eat that. It says it's fortified with vitamins. Really? I'm not allowed to give my baby honey? No, you can't because of botulism risk. So a lot of people don't know that. So it's on us. Now, mind you, if patients aren't seeing us and they're going to telemedicine and but if you're able to see them, you want to talk to them about their diet. Every pediatrician should be talking to the parent about what is their child eating and to get them off the sugary cereals, and the sweet drinks, limiting their sugar. So they say 53 medical schools, according to NBC News, has already agreed to take part of this new initiative from RFK Jr. I think every medical school should offer to increase nutritional training. And it shouldn't just be a block. I know it's easier for schools to just do a block, but they could show how longitudinally throughout their training, the nutrition aspect is addressed. I mean, it's an extra, not extra, but it's already on your SOAP notes. It's already on your electronic medical records, the section on nutrition. If you're telling patients to cut back on smoking and alcohol and Zen pouches and all that other stuff, why aren't you talking to them about increasing your fruits and vegetables? It just makes sense. I look at how many people who have to watch their spinach intake if they take Coumadin. There's drug interactions with, or your food can also interact with your medications like grapefruit juice and some statins. So these are things that are important. We've talked about nutrition on the show, but good for RFK Jr., good for the medical schools that are doing this. But I didn't want people to think that the students aren't getting any. They are. They're getting nutrition. We are teaching it in the academic setting, but how to get that information to patients with every diagnosis, that's something that we got to teach. 1-877 Dr. Dolly, don't go away.
This is an urgent announcement for anyone that's $10,000 or more in debt. Before you make another minimum payment, you need to know there are special programs that can completely free you of your debt. Total Financial Freedom can help you become debt-free in months instead of years. Resolve your credit card debt, signature loans, department store cards, internet loans, and timeshares. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020 for a free consultation. For 16 years, Total Financial Freedom has helped thousands get out of debt. You can feel confident when calling because Total Financial Freedom is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. Battling for years and years stuck in the endless cycle of minimum payments could take decades. You have the right to get your debt resolved and substantially reduce your monthly payments. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020. That's 800-878-6020. 800-878-6020.
Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Dahlia. As many of you know, I lost another colleague to suicide. And tragically, tens of thousands of Americans, including hundreds of physicians, take their lives each year. Why is suicide so common? Why doctors? Even medical students have alarming suicide rates. Nurse burnout is at an all-time high. Maybe it's the monstrous workloads we face every day. Maybe it's because of burnout, malpractice suits, online reviews. Medicine has changed so rapidly that it's almost unrecognizable to those of us who entered this field and wanted to take it by storm. But there's not a lot of resources out there for healthcare providers who deny that they are struggling or at risk. So my book, The Depressed Doctor, aims to change that for both the physician and medical student and anyone else who is struggling. Find The Depressed Doctor on Amazon or at drdahlia.com. And if you are currently struggling, call or text 988, the National Suicide Prevention and Crisis Hotline. Don't wait. The silence is killing us.
We're back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer. And big thanks to you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So one of you would ask what my favorite toy was as a kid. It was the big wheel. I like to ride, and I like to go fast. If you ain't first, you last. We couldn't afford, any fancier toys than the big wheel. I don't know if there were kid trucks at the time, but I really loved my big wheel. That was fun. Bikes, a little different. The reason why I didn't like bikes is if I fell down and hurt myself, I got in trouble. And then I was too afraid to ride the bike because I knew I would fall. And if I fell, I would get in trouble because my mom would be mad that she had to, fix my wounds and put mercurochrome. And if at all I had to go and get stitches, oh boy. Because one time I fell in the bathtub and I had to have stitches and she was mad and that was miserable. And I don't remember if I got a beating for that one, but it was not fun. So I didn't like bike riding as much as I thought I would because I would get in trouble and then my parents wouldn't let me do it a lot of times because they were like, I just can't have you get hurt. And so that was frustrating. But my big wheel, I really, really liked. I didn't like Barbies, any of those. But when I got older, I didn't have one of these, but I found my uncle's chemistry set from the 1950s. And I didn't want to touch it because it was, there's chemicals from the 50s, right? I didn't know much about it. But I liked microscope sets and chemistry sets when I got older. I just liked science. And I thought it was really, really good. I would put boogers, underneath the microscope. And then my mom would have to clean the microscope. And then again, she'd get mad. But I just thought I really liked my microscope sets more than the chemistry. But I still liked it. It was fun. And so when you have a child that likes to create and likes to, understand the world around them and look and see what things look like, I mean, you want to encourage it. If you have a child who wants to read, encourage it. Like you would, when you were a little kid, you'd get in trouble. I was never one of these kids who would read. I didn't like reading much, but you'd hear that kids would get in trouble because they would be having a flashlight and trying to read their book and their parents would go to bed, put the book down. I'm like, you have a child that wants to read and put themselves to sleep? They're going to have better sleeping later. Let that kid read a book and not be on computers and all that. You want to encourage that. Well, one teenager who allegedly, was working on a science experiment almost got arrested and was investigated by the FBI. This happened in Orange County. Malvin Fritz, 17 years old, was doing home science experiments. FBI gets involved because they think he's making a bomb or something dangerous. He said he was mixing water, rubbing alcohol, and chemicals commonly found in Epsom salts and nail polish remover at his Irvine home. Landlord discovered these experiments and raised the alarm. Now, this child, Amelvin Fritz, was not in high school at 17 years old. He was a UC Irvine biology student. I mean, this kid's smart. And he wants to become a doctor and work on a cure for cancer. Apparently, he lost his aunt to cancer in recent years. So the student, Fritz, said, he said this to NBC4, what my interest truly was is in creating these molecules called cubates, which have a three-dimensional structure, which can be manipulated in a way to allow these molecules to bind directly and in an efficient and better way than people have bound these compounds ever before. Okay, that doesn't sound like a terrorist to me, people. He said, and this has been a truly personal battle for me because I lost my aunt to cancer in 2020. Well, the landlord called the police last month because he stumbled upon one of his experiments, seeing chemical formulas on a whiteboard. FBI agents, hazmat crews rushed to the house. And then they've been investigating. In fact, a specialized California National Guard unit investigating alleged weapons of mass destruction got involved. Now, the family's attorney says he was conducting experiments and pointed to his YouTube channel where he shares instructional chemistry videos. And according to his attorneys, he said, we categorically deny the allegations that have been suggested and reject any implication that Fritz poses a threat in any way, shape, or form. They say there's no credible evidence to support the narrative that has begun to circulate, and we are confident that when the facts are reviewed objectively, that will become clear. He was using protective equipment, the kid said. Doesn't believe he was doing anything dangerous. But experts are saying if you're going to be doing those chemicals, you got to do it in a lab setting where there's eye washes, fire extinguishers. So the FBI is continuing to investigate. No charges have been made. He's not arrested. But, I'm kind of scratching my head on this one. It's interesting. Anytime I was doing scientific experiments, I did do it at school. However, anytime I was working with my own little chemistry set or my microscope, it was at home. Because you couldn't just go into the lab. Teachers wouldn't let you just go into the lab and do stuff. You had to be supervised. All students had to be supervised. So if there was no teacher to supervise, in fact, I burned myself and my friend, sadly. I didn't on purpose, but I was doing a chemistry. My chemistry teacher, Mr. Kinzer, really liked me. And he said that I had potential. And I came up with a chemistry experiment. And he was hoping I could win the state science fair. So he let me leave class to go into the lab and work on my science fair project. Well, the TA, the teacher's assistant, who ended up being my friend, Jennifer, she grabbed for me the sulfuric acid. I would think I was looking at the vitamin C content of orange juice, freshly picked versus old picked, or oranges that fall on the ground. Can you still have vitamin C quality in that? And so my project was called To Squeeze or Not to Squeeze. That is the question. I didn't think there was any copyright laws that I'd be violating with that. But when she grabbed for me the sulfuric acid, I took it, and I guess, or one of us handed the bottle of sulfuric acid, but it was dripping on the outside with sulfuric acid. That was sitting on the shelf. And so I told her to put it down quickly. And when we put it down, or I put it down quickly, because I could start to feel the burn. And when I put it down on the ground, it exploded before it hit the tile, or as it touched the tile. So it splattered all over me and my friend. It started to burn through my clothes. My dad had to bring me a shirt because I had holes in my shirt from that. And the tile was completely destroyed. But Mr. Kinzer was cool with me because, I was doing an experiment, but there was nobody supervising us. It was I needed her to hand me the sulfuric acid. I grab it. It's starting to, there's some sediment that's burning me. I put it on the ground. I didn't throw it. I set it on the ground carefully because, it was burning, and then it explodes. I don't know what the hell that happened. But anyway, that's why you need supervision. I'm not sure the teacher would have burned themselves, so maybe it's good we had one less person burned, but that was a bad day. By the way, I did end up winning first place. My parents wouldn't let me, my mom wouldn't let me go to the science fair. I don't know why. Because I told her I wanted to go. I worked hard on this, but she wouldn't let me go. And it was at ASU. And maybe because she didn't want to drive or something like that. But I ended up winning first prize, which was huge. And I was really, really proud of myself. I don't know what it's like to win as, Mr. Kinzer gave me the ribbon. So I was happy about that. But, when kids can do something and feel like they're changing the world, it's huge. On the other end, I get why the landlord was like, say what? With everything going on now, where you have, people making bombs at home, or the Catholic church shooter in Minneapolis, where he had all his weaponry in his room. I don't know how the landlord found out, but, I think, having a conversation with authorities is appropriate. Because, this idea of, well, don't say anything because you could be politically incorrect, or you could look like you're profiling somebody, or you could, we're telling everybody, if you see something that doesn't seem right, say something. Say something. Let us decide that it's not a threat. I don't know why, though, the investigation is going on that long. If it really is a student who's doing chemistry experiments and you see what's on the board, you see what he's using, Now, but, was he trying to make an explosive? That could be a concern. You're not allowed to make explosives in your house. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but I kind of am giving this kid the benefit of the doubt. He's a high school student at UC Irvine. Unless he's under so much stress that he's like, I want to make weapons. But I don't think he's making weapons of mass destruction. 1-877 Dolly, don't go away. Dr. Dahlia here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
And we're back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. 1-877 Dr. Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. So when people say, yeah, we need to socialize medicine, that'll work. America should do that. Just look at what's happening in the UK. Look what's happening in other countries. No, I don't think socialism works. But we're doing our own little test experiment now that Mamdani was elected. And again, if that's who New Yorkers want, not everybody voted. I think 1 in 8 New Yorkers voted. But if they voted in Zohran Mamdani, and that's what they want, quote unquote democratic socialist / communist, then that's what New York wanted. And so, we'll see what happens. It's going to be an experiment in does socialism work or communism works with rent freezes and government run grocery stores and free childcare and free buses and free this, free that. All right. Well, how's it working? Well, he's been in office now for a little bit, but unfortunately, he says New York City is facing a serious financial crisis. New York City is suffering. They're not rich and wealthy with all these coffers of money to do all this free stuff. He says, I will be blunt. Now, this is being reported by MoneyWise. He says New York City is facing a serious financial crisis. There is a massive fiscal deficit in our city's budget to the tune of at least $12 billion. Well, that would have been nice to know prior to you getting elected, saying you're going to be promising all this free stuff. Come on. So $12 billion. Now, he blames Eric Adams. He says we did not arrive at this place by accident. He said this crisis has a name and a chief architect. In the words of the Jackson 5, it's easy as ABC. This is the Adams budget crisis. Now, this follows recent figures from New York City Comptroller Mark Levin, who said the city's facing a $2.2 billion budget shortfall in the current fiscal year, along with a $10.4 billion gap in the next 2. So the Mamdani has described the situation in dire terms, arguing that the scale of the challenge eclipses even the financial fallout from the 2008 downturn. He said, we are speaking about a fiscal crisis, a scale greater than the Great Recession. Okay, so what are you going to do about it? Well, he says there will not be one single thing that can answer this crisis. He said it will require us to pursue every single avenue. That means looking inward into savings and efficiencies. That will also, hence, that's the word, defund the police, pay city workers less. That's what that means. He says this also means raising taxes, on the wealthiest New Yorkers and the most profitable corporations, and it means recalibrating the relationship with the state. So he has proposed raising the city's income tax rate by 2 percentage points on residents earning more than $1 million annually, along with increasing the corporate tax rate to match New Jersey's 11.5%. Now, he promised that prices would go down if he got elected in New York. So if he thinks very obtusely and narrowly that, well, we're just going to make the rich pay, what do rich people do if they own a business or they own a company? What do they do to cover the extra expense? They raise their rates. This is one of the reasons why things are so expensive. When Biden said pay them more, everybody paid their staff more. They did, because they needed to get staff back after all this work from home remote BS. And then what ended up happening? Well, how do we offset the labor costs? We raise prices. And now a sandwich is $18 at a regular restaurant. A salad is $21.95. Are you kidding me? You want to buy an iced tea, it's $3.50 at least, sometimes $4.50. That's what's happened. So residents earning more than $1 million annually. Now you're like, well, they're millionaires. If they're making $1 million, that's a lot of money. That is. But is that gross or net? So we talked about how a medical office can very easily, not easily, trust me, it's not easy, but you could have a medical office owned by somebody that brings in gross $1 million. But after they pay labor, malpractice insurance, rent, all that, their take home is $150. I've seen it happen. Happened to me. It's expensive to run an office. Now, if they're only taxing what you're earning, but if they look at corporate tax rates and they look at it, then that could be pretty sticky. And one thing that he wants to do is the rent freezing. The rent freezing is causing a lot of concern because people are saying that's going to cause rent to go up. How does rent freezing cause rent to go up? Well, apparently New York has about 1 million rent stabilized units that house over 2 million people. So it's not all the apartments in the city. I guess they could only freeze rent on the rent stabilized units. He wants to, by the way, build another 200,000 units. Rent stabilized units, which is fantastic for you not to have rent increases. But who's paying for those extra 200,000 units? And then what does the landlord do? So if the landlord has rent freezing, and it would go for 4 years, Mamdani wants it to run his term. Well, if construction costs come up, if maintenance, labor costs go up, if your property taxes are going up, that's why the rent goes up. True, some people might be abusing tenants, but these landlords are saying, well, wait a second, okay, if you're going to freeze the rents, are you going to also freeze all the labor? Nobody's going to be getting raises. Who needs to fix the plumbing? Who needs to do the painting? No. That's all going up. Are the property taxes going to go down? Are the mortgage rates going down? No. So then if you're stabilizing that, then what the landlords are like, well, then if less money is going to come in and now we have these higher costs, we might be a little slow to fix the broken toilet. Now, they're not supposed to. You're not supposed to let the property deteriorate. There's laws, but I don't think you're going to get the highest priced plumber. Not that you'd get that now anyway, but still. And so then if anybody has property that's both, shall we say, rent stabilized, and then a property that's not, well, the property that's not, they are going to skyrocket that rate, that rate and rent to offset the rent stabilization cost. So people are predicting that's going to be bad. That's going to get ugly. The idea of free childcare. It'd be nice to have free childcare, but who's training the supervisors and the teachers and are these infants? Who's training child care workers? Infants, 3-year-olds, these kids need to learn if they're 3, 4. Where are these free areas going to happen? Who's paying the rent? Who's ensuring they're up to code and not wasting money like what happened in Minnesota and where the sign said Leering Center and not learning? That's going to cost money, a lot of it. And if Mamdani is saying, well, we're having a big shortfall, we have a budget, you can only tax the rich so much. The rich are like, I'm out of here. See ya. Look at what's happening in California. I heard even Steven Spielberg is leaving California to move. I think he's moving to New York, but then he might move also if he has to pay more. You don't have enough rich people to put that extra money into the system. There's not enough of them. You just, well, so it's a concern. And seeing that, this is already, I want New York to be successful. I would love for us to figure out a way how to make childcare cheaper. But, I don't think socialism or communism is a way. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799, and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
As an organ donor, your story doesn't have to end. The good in you can live on. In fact, you could save up to 8 lives and restore sight and health for many more. Sign up right now online as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You'll be happy you did. And just maybe, someone else will be happy too. Go to organdonor.gov. It saves lives. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
We are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dahlia, 1-877 DOCDALI. Okay, so I don't like rumors, and I don't like tabloid type stuff, and when I hear this, I'm like, come on, man. However, there are some rumors, and I've been asked about what I'm hearing as it pertains to Kristi Noem, and there are rumors that Trump may fire her as it relates to the latest, I guess, testimony exchange and DHS losing its funding, and not all Republicans or Democrats are on board, and they're not going to be able to, I guess, come up with a compromise. And with what happened in Minneapolis, which horribly, we had 2 people lose their lives. I personally think Minneapolis mayor, as I've said before, needed to have protesters away, like we always do, away from any sort of, police officer, firefighter, first responder, government worker who's armed. Minneapolis was supposed to have the peaceful protesters, the peaceful ones, right, in an area where they could safely assemble and practice their First Amendment right. There was no city involvement, making sure that people were not interfering, and it was a mess, and it was sad. And now we have the result of 2 people dead. Is that Kristi Noem's fault? Is that, it's interesting. One of the things that I guess came up is, I guess, these ads, where she's on a horse and, she's, telling people to go, and she and Trump are they're giving you a one-way ticket out, but you could always come back, if you're going to leave legally, and we're going, here's my thing, and I'm no, DHS secretary, okay, and I'm no politician, but I like to look at where bipartisanly everybody agrees. I understand there's fringes and there's extremes, but the immigration issue, I think, doesn't have to be so complex, especially since we have a system of legal immigration. So if you're at the DMV and you take cuts, what happens? You have to go to the back of the line. If you have other people standing there, right? Come on. And security thinks that those other people trying to legally get through to the DMV and do what they need to do, and that they're going to start fighting with the people taking cuts, security may get involved, saying, look, either go to the back of the line or you leave. Canada does that. Mexico does that. There's I think bipartisanly, and I'm not saying this is Kristi Noem's fault or anybody's fault, but I understand that it was a mess. We had open borders. Who knows, if Iran has, terrorists that were able to sneak in, wolves in sheep's clothing, things like that. We have, on the deportation side of things, have deported criminals and found some really, really bad people. Unfortunately, not fast enough, as we've seen, accidents and rapes and assaults and murders from some of these criminal elements that got here and were able to hide, and over the last few years. But if you ask bipartisanly, and the public is like, wait, we have a legal immigration process, and then you have somebody taking cuts. We are proud of our legal immigration process because that's how most of our families came here. That's how my father came here. There was a legal process. And so we want to secure the legal process. For those of you who didn't go through the legal process, you're going to have to go to the back of the line, or you will be deported, especially if you have a criminal background. Now, that's something that's the same messaging Canada has, Mexico has, Japan has. If you came here illegally, you don't have the proper documentation, you are not following. You got to get to the back of the line. That's just how it is. That in any other country, and I think there's a way to approach it with ICE. That is doing operations, or an FBI doing an operation, or we just saw SWAT. No, not SWAT. We saw the California National Guard, right? Enter a home where a teenager who goes to UC Irvine because he was able to skip high school was doing scientific experiments, and they're investigating that. The general public understands that we have government agencies that are going to have to go in and do work. I understand there's fringe people saying, well, let's, blow whistles in their ears and let's interfere and whatever. But the general people understand that there are, operations that are happening. It's nothing new. Obama had to deport, Clinton had to deport, Bush had to deport. And so what I would have done if I was Kristi Noem is made sure there was a barrier, or made sure that if there was an operation, you had agents providing a safety zone so that you couldn't have protesters come in. And I know protesters should not be, that, with their minivan or engaging with the armed officers. But we have plenty of individuals that we could have utilized through government resources to make sure that peaceful protesters were doing their peaceful protest, and then if there were protesters that weren't being peaceful, they don't breach the safety barricade. Whenever there's a fire, the city's supposed to be doing that. The city makes sure there's no looky-loos trying to come and get away, let the fire department do what they need to do. If somebody is being pulled over and you decide to come up behind the cop, that's dangerous. You don't do that. I mean, it's the city's job to make sure that people are not interfering or putting themselves in harm's way. Just giving the benefit of the doubt that somebody might not understand that if you have an armed officer or somebody that, is in the middle of a operation, they're going to be on heightened, awareness, and with their lives being threatened, they're going to protect themselves. So it's really on the city. And if Kristi Noem didn't have the ability to work with the city and the mayor didn't want to help and they didn't, then it would have been then an option to ensure that you have barricades, or you might have had to do your operations, I guess, undercover. And I know it wasn't easy. It's not easy to do your job. Look at these cops getting snowballs and ice and rocks thrown at them. You have individuals that are, like the mayhem, like the chaos, want the fighting. And we don't want to see abuelas being, deported. And I know, if somebody's been here for 20, 25 years, is that on us? But on the other end, I think bipartisanly, everybody agrees that our legal immigration process has made America one of the greatest countries in the world. And when we compromise the border or the integrity, or shall we say the skin of the human body, our largest organ that provides a barrier and protection, it affects the body. You cannot have breaks in the barriers. And because we have a legal immigration process, we have to shunt or pivot people there. If Mexico's deporting illegal immigrants, Canada's deporting illegal immigrants, America's deported illegal immigrants as well. That's nothing new. But that messaging, that is the moderates understand that. They do. Now, if this is just, we want to be anti-Trump or we want to be anti-Biden, there's no talking to, the extremes. But, Kristi Noem, I don't know much about if she's been doing a good job or not. I mean, I do know that we have a secure border, but I also know that it has been chaotic. And we don't want to see any Americans die in the process of America enforcing its long-standing immigration laws. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Minneapolis gets sued and the mayor gets sued for not ensuring that bystanders were away from individuals who were armed and, in a separate safe area to protest. That's on them for not making sure that, there was no safe barricades and areas of separation. But, is that on Kristi Noem? Does Kristi Noem get fired? Is it that because the election's coming up, somebody has to look like they, were the, sacrificial lamb? So I'm not sure what's going to happen. I don't know, but that's what we're hearing. 1-877-Doc-Dolly. Don't go away.
Can you believe, with all the recent violent protests, looting, and destruction, some areas are considering either defunding or abolishing the police? At a time when America's neighborhoods need the protection of police the most, some elected officials would rather create more chaos by playing politics. If you're sick of elected officials caving in to demands of the radical left, you're not alone. It's time we stand up and declare our support for local police. The majority of police officers are important partners in protecting our God-given rights. If you prefer freedom over chaos, then learn how you can help protect the local police that serve your community. Call today and request your free Support Your Local Police info packet. Dial 800-JBS-USA-1. That's 800-JBS-USA-1. Request your free Support Your Local Police info packet by calling 800 JBS USA 1 today.